This is the inflatable camping tent I ended up buying after one too many soggy evenings fighting with pole sleeves in the rain. I wanted a big, livable shelter I could set up fast for family weekends and late fall trips with friends. After a few outings, I figured it's worth sharing how it actually performs. Because the hype around air tents doesn't always match what happens at a windy, muddy campsite. I'd put this tent in that sweet spot where it's made for car camping and longer stays, not backpacking. It claims space for 8 to 10, but with cots, a couple of big air mattresses, and a stove area or a gear corner, I'm happiest at 6 to 8. It sits below the premium brands in price, but it's not a bargain bin pop-up. It's for people who want comfort and quick setup without paying luxury money, and who don't mind learning a couple of tricks to pack it back down. My first impression on the very first trip was the weight. It's a hefty bundle. I plan my trunk around it and carry it with 2 hands. Once it's on the ground though, the setup is almost comically simple. I unroll, close the deflate valves, hook up the pump, and the whole thing stands up by itself in a few minutes. The included hand pump works, but it's a workout for a tent this size. I switched to a battery SUP pump, and now I can stake lines and sort the interior while it inflates. The part that actually takes time is staking and guy lines. With a big inflatable cabin, stakes matter. When I use all the corner points plus the guy lines, it rides out gusts much better, and the walls stay drum tight. Inside is where this thing earns its keep. The walls are close to vertical, so the floor space is actually usable. I can stand fully upright almost everywhere. 2 doors keep traffic flowing, and the 6 windows with mesh do a good job of bud control and cross ventilation. On clear evenings, I roll most of them up, and it feels more like a little room than a tent. It swallows furniture easily. I've run 2 queen air mattresses along one side, a cot, and a small table on the other, and still had a walkway in the middle without anyone crawling over gear to get out at night. Weather-wise, I've had it out in steady rain and a couple of blustery nights. In rain, the fabric and floor kept us dry. The thick floor feels closer to a raft material than a crinkly tarp, and I stopped worrying about camp chairs or cots puncturing it. What caught me off guard the first night was condensation. With everything zip tight, I woke up to damp walls and thought it was leaking. It wasn't. It's the nature of these heavier fabrics. Now I always keep 2 windows cracked, even when it's cold, and it made a huge difference. If I know a serious storm is coming, I still throw a tarp or fly over the top as a porch and extra insurance. In wind, the air beams flex and spring back. That flex is the whole point. I watched the walls bow and then rebound during a dusty front and felt less nervous than I used to with fiberglass poles. I did one chilly weekend where I used the stove jack with a small wood stove. If you go that route, use a proper heat shield under and behind the stove, a spark arrestor on the pipe, and mind your clearances. I kept the pipe off the fabric with a ring and checked the beam pressures after the tent warmed up. It stayed cozy and held heat better than I expected, and I cracked a window for safety and to reduce moisture. I wouldn't run a stove unattended, but for camp mornings and evenings, it turned the tent into a tiny cabin. The biggest learning curve with this tent is packing it down. Deflation is the easy part. Rolling it so it fits back in the bag is where the work starts. I open the valves, leave a door half open so air doesn't get trapped, and then walk the air out by rolling from the far end like a tube of toothpaste. When I take my time, it fits. If I rush, I'm fighting a lumpy burrito. Also, this thing needs to be stored dry. I had one damp pack out, and I had to unroll it in the yard the next day to prevent that musty smell. Not a big deal if you plan for it, but something to keep in mind. A few small touches I appreciate after multiple weekends. The zippers hadn't snagged or failed, the windows roll and tie without a wrestling match, and the floor feels secure under folding furniture. I've checked the beams for pressure loss a couple of times. On cold nights they can feel softer by morning because air contracts. A quick top-off and they're back to firm. I haven't had any actual leaks so far. Compared to the big pole tent I used before, this is a sanity saver. With poles, I'd be mapping segments, threading sleeves, dealing with one tricky hub, and if it was raining, everything got wet while I fiddled with it. I've snapped fiberglass poles in wind and had to duct tape them mid-trip. This inflatable setup cuts my time way down and doesn't have that single point of failure. When a gust hits, it flexes, and that's that. On the flip side, my old tent packed smaller and lighter, and I could carry it solo across a lone parking lot. With this one, I park as close as I can, and it's absolutely car camp only. I also looked at pricier inflatable brands before buying. The premium ones had extra vestibules, more refined ventilation, and sometimes nicer fabrics with a softer hand. They're great, but for what I wanted, fast setup, tall walls, solid floor, windows you can actually use, this one delivers most of the experience at a friendlier cost. I've accepted that I need to manage condensation and take a few extra minutes on pack down. That trade is fine for me. The real benefits that matter after using it are simple. It sets up fast enough that I'm sitting in a chair with a coffee while other folks are still figuring out which pole goes where. The interior space feels like a room, not a triangle, so sleeping, changing, and hanging out during a rainy afternoon doesn't feel cramped. And in wind, I don't get that pit of the stomach dread that a pole is going to snap. It's just quiet, steady flex, and back to normal. Is it worth buying? If you're a car camper who values comfort and quick setup, and you can handle a heavier bag and a little technique on pack down, yes. I get a lot of use out of it with family and friends, and I don't worry about weather the way I used to. If you need to hike it in, or if you hate the idea of drying a big tent at home, it's probably not your thing. For me, the trade-offs make sense, and I'd buy it again. I'd also budget for a decent electric pump and bring a tarp for shade and bonus rain protection. Those two tweaks make it feel dialed. That's my honest take after real trips, wet nights, cold mornings, and a couple of windy tests. If you've got questions I didn't cover, drop them in the comments. If you want more practical gear reviews like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video.